The galaxy was vast, filled with civilizations that adhered to an unspoken rule: survival depended on clear communication. Every ship in space, whether a sleek trade vessel or a lumbering cargo freighter, was required to list its weapons openly on the manifest. It was a tradition rooted in practicality and fear. Pirates rarely risked attacking well-armed ships, and compliance made everyone's life easier. Yet there was one exception that defied logic and sent whispers rippling through pirate dens and trading posts alike: Deathworlder ships. Humans had entered the galactic scene only a few decades ago, quickly earning the title Deathworlders, due to the lethal and chaotic nature of their home planet. Earth's gravity was punishing, its ecosystems vicious, and its weather unpredictable. To the rest of the galaxy, the idea of intelligent life thriving in such conditions was absurd. But humans not only thrived, they excelled. Their ships, however, were an anomaly. Deathworlder freighters never listed weapons in their manifests. At first, it seemed like arrogance, a bold claim that they were untouchable. But as the years passed, a troubling pattern emerged: pirate crews that targeted human ships often didn't return. Those who did were forever changed, muttering vague warnings and refusing to speak of what they'd encountered. In the dimly lit hold of a pirate flagship, a notorious crew discussed their next target. Their captain, a towering insectoid alien with a hardened exoskeleton and jagged mandibles, paced with palpable irritation. Deathworlder ships were becoming a problem for his operations, and his pride couldn't allow these newcomers to flaunt their defiance. Word had reached him of a human freighter traveling through an isolated trade route, unarmed, slow, and alone. It was the perfect opportunity to prove the humans weren't as invincible as they pretended to be. The crew's confidence was infectious. Deathworlders, after all, were just another species. Their lack of visible weapons was probably a bluff, a tactic to keep raiders at bay. The pirates had faced countless prey who tried to outwit them. None had succeeded. They believed humans would be no different. The pirate ship intercepted the human freighter in the cold expanse of space, its hulking silhouette dwarfing the unassuming vessel. Scans showed nothing remarkable: standard cargo hold, basic life support systems, and no visible weaponry or shields. The pirate captain sneered at the simplicity. This was going to be an easy haul. As was custom, the pirates hailed the ship, demanding it surrender its cargo and prepare for boarding. There was no response. The freighter continued on its course, unbothered by the massive vessel shadowing it. Annoyed, the captain ordered his gunners to fire a warning shot, a low-powered blast that harmlessly grazed the freighter's hull. Still, no response. The silence was infuriating, but also strangely unnerving. Why wouldn't they acknowledge the obvious threat? The decision to board the ship was made quickly. A contingent of heavily armed raiders was dispatched to breach the freighter's hull and subdue its crew. They prepared for a straightforward operation, expecting terrified humans to cower and surrender the moment they saw alien weapons. The boarding team entered the freighter's airlock with ease. No defenses activated, no alarms blared. The ship was quiet, too quiet. Inside, the freighter was unremarkable. Its corridors were narrow, its walls lined with utilitarian panels that suggested a ship built for function, not comfort. The pirates spread out, searching for the crew and the cargo hold. As they moved deeper into the ship, an unease began to settle over them. It wasn't just the silence, it was the sense that the ship was watching them. Lights flickered intermittently, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. A faint hum of machinery filled the air, punctuated by distant, unidentifiable noises. One pirate, a wiry scavenger with keen eyes, noticed something strange in the cargo bay. Among the neatly stacked crates of supplies, a human phrase was painted on the wall in bold, red letters: asterisk. "We fight with what we have." Asterisk. He chuckled nervously, showing it to his crewmates. They dismissed it as an idle boast, a pathetic attempt to intimidate their captors. But the words lingered in the back of their minds. The search for the crew proved fruitless. The pirates found no signs of life, no central control station, and no resistance. It was as if the freighter was abandoned, its systems operating on autopilot. Yet, the ship didn't feel empty. Every turn of the corridor, every creak of the metal flooring seemed to suggest something unseen lurking just out of reach. When one of the pirates tried to open a sealed door, it didn't budge. He cursed, pulling out a plasma torch to cut through. The moment the torch ignited, the lights in the corridor dimmed, and a low, rhythmic thumping sound began to echo through the ship. It was almost imperceptible at first, but it grew louder, more deliberate, like the beating of a giant heart. The pirates froze, their bravado evaporating as the sound filled their helmets. One of them whispered, "What the hell is that?" The captain, monitoring the team from the pirate flagship, barked through their comms, demanding a status update. The boarding party stammered out fragmented explanations, sealed doors, strange noises, and the unsettling feeling that they weren't alone. The captain dismissed their fears, ordering them to press on. But even he couldn't ignore the creeping tension. Something about this ship wasn't right. Back on the freighter, the pirates' confidence continued to erode. Equipment began to malfunction, communication devices crackled with static, and their weapons occasionally jammed without explanation. The thumping sound grew closer, reverberating through the walls. Panic set in as the first pirate disappeared, his muffled scream cutting off abruptly. The others found only his dropped weapon, still warm from his grip. The remaining crew began to whisper among themselves, their fear mounting. The words painted in red echoed in their minds, *. We fight with what we have. It was then they realized the truth. They were not hunting humans. The humans were hunting them. The explosion rocked the pirates as they attempted to regroup, the sound reverberating through the freighter's narrow corridors. A pressure seal locked behind them, cutting off their retreat to the airlock. Panic surged through the raiding party. What had started as a routine operation had spiraled into chaos. They were trapped inside the ship with no way to communicate back to their flagship. The lights dimmed further, plunging the corridors into near darkness. Emergency illumination flickered, casting erratic shadows that seemed to stretch and twist unnaturally. The humans hadn't shown themselves, but the pirates could feel their presence. Every clank of metal and hiss of steam felt deliberate, as though the ship itself was alive, guiding its human crew to strike. One of the pirates, a seasoned raider with more scars than limbs, tried to calm the others, asserting they just needed to regroup and secure the cargo. But even as he spoke, his confidence faltered. The humans had anticipated this. Every step they took seemed to activate something, a makeshift trap or a subtle environmental manipulation. Floors became slick with mysterious fluids, vents expelled bursts of scalding air, and gravity flickered just enough to disorient them. The pirates' advanced weaponry and armor, designed for direct combat, were proving useless against this type of warfare. A burst of movement in the shadows drew their attention, and one pirate opened fire. The plasma bolt seared the air, but it struck nothing. Another sound, this time above them, made them aim their weapons at the ceiling. They saw nothing but dark pipes and conduits, yet the feeling of being watched intensified. The seasoned raider, now visibly shaken, muttered that they needed to move quickly and find the humans before the humans found them. The pirates tried to advance toward the cargo hold, believing it to be their best chance at finding the crew, or at least something of value to justify this debacle. But the moment they entered, they were met with a barrage of chaos. A wall of crates collapsed suddenly, pinning two pirates under heavy machinery. Another tripped a wire that released a torrent of corrosive foam, melting armor and weapons alike. The humans weren't just defending their ship, they were turning it into a weapon. The first human appeared, stepping out from the shadows with a calm, almost unnerving confidence. They weren't a soldier, at least not by the galaxy's standards. Their clothing was simple, practical, smeared with grease and dirt. They held no advanced weapon, only a heavy wrench in one hand and a grim expression on their face. The pirate leader ordered his crew to fire, but before anyone could react, the human moved with brutal efficiency, incapacitating one pirate with a single swing before disappearing back into the darkness. This wasn't a battle. It was a massacre designed to break their will. The humans didn't fight in the open, they struck from angles the pirates couldn't predict, using the environment to their advantage. Doors slammed shut to isolate smaller groups of raiders. Gas began to fill one corridor, forcing the pirates to remove their helmets and choke on the fumes. In another section, a makeshift trap using industrial cables suspended a raider in midair, leaving them vulnerable to whatever was lurking in the shadows. The psychological warfare was relentless. The freighter's speakers crackled to life, blaring distorted sounds, whispers, laughter, and snippets of human music that the pirates couldn't understand but instinctively feared. One pirate, already on the edge of panic, screamed for it to stop, firing wildly into the walls. His shots only ricocheted, injuring his own squad mate. The humans didn't need overwhelming firepower to win. They were letting the pirates destroy themselves. A sudden silence fell over the ship. The remaining pirates huddled together, their numbers drastically reduced. They had abandoned their mission of securing cargo, focused now only on survival. The leader tried to rally them, shouting that Deathworlders were nothing special, just overhyped primitives with no real strength. But his bravado rang hollow. His crew no longer believed him. They had seen the efficiency, the ruthlessness, the sheer adaptability of their human adversaries. When the humans finally revealed themselves in force, it wasn't an overwhelming army but a small group of freighter crew, mechanics, technicians, and a medic. They carried no standardized weapons, only tools repurposed for violence. What they lacked in technology, they made up for in precision. Each strike was calculated, exploiting the pirates' weaknesses and forcing them into untenable positions. The pirate leader found himself face to face with the freighter captain, a human who appeared almost unassuming. They wore a battered jumpsuit, their hands calloused from years of labor. Yet their eyes held a quiet intensity that made the pirate hesitate. The human didn't speak immediately, letting the silence stretch uncomfortably. When they finally did, their voice was calm, almost conversational. "You thought we didn't list weapons because we didn't have any. That was your first mistake." The captain gestured to the surrounding ship, the corridors now littered with disabled pirates and ruined equipment. "This ship is our weapon. Every pipe, every bolt, every tool. We don't need plasma rifles to fight. We've spent our entire history surviving on a world that tried to kill us every day. You think you're dangerous? You're nothing compared to Earth." The pirate leader lunged, his pride unable to tolerate such a blatant insult. But the captain didn't flinch. With a swift motion, they sidestepped and used the same wrench that had felled the first raider to disable him. The leader collapsed, gasping in pain as the humans restrained him with improvised shackles. The surviving pirates, now disarmed and demoralized, were herded back to the airlock. The freighter crew didn't kill them, they didn't need to. The humans knew that the fear they had instilled would do more damage than any weapon. As the airlock sealed behind the last pirate, the freighter captain issued a single message to the pirate flagship, which had been helplessly monitoring the debacle. "Your crew is alive. Barely. Don't make the mistake of coming back." Without waiting for a response, the freighter resumed its course, leaving the pirate ship behind. The humans hadn't just defended their ship, they had delivered a message that would echo across the galaxy. Deathworlders didn't just survive, they thrived, even in the face of the impossible. The air was heavy with tension as the first light of dawn crept through the mining planet's toxic haze. Zerani and Eli moved silently through the narrow tunnels, their senses heightened. Every step, every sound, felt like it could shatter the fragile window of opportunity they had. The transport ship would arrive soon, its brief window of vulnerability, their only chance to escape. Eli carried himself with quiet determination despite the fresh wound on his arm. Zerani felt the weight of their plan pressing down on her, but her resolve was stronger now. She had never imagined placing her life in the hands of another, let alone a human, but Eli had shown her a kind of courage that transcended the boundaries of species. As they neared the surface, the rumble of engines signaled the arrival of the transport ship. Zerani's telepathic senses picked up fragments of the cartel guard's thoughts, routine inspections, boredom, and a vague sense of unease. She latched onto this unease, amplifying it subtly to create distractions. It wouldn't buy them much time, but every second mattered. Eli signaled for her to follow as he approached the transport ship's docking platform. The guards, more focused on their own grumbling, barely glanced at them as they slipped into the shadows. Zarani extended her senses, locating the weak points in the ship's security systems. Her abilities, though still dampened by the shackles, were enough to guide Eli as he bypassed the outer locks. Inside, the ship's interior was cramped and sterile, the hum of machinery vibrating through the walls. Zarani worked quickly to disable the tracking systems, while Eli secured the cockpit. Every action was a gamble. The longer they stayed unnoticed, the closer they came to freedom, or discovery. Their luck didn't last. Just as Zarani finished disabling the last of the ship's systems, a loud alarm blared through the docking bay. The cartel guards had discovered the sabotage. Zarani's telepathic senses were overwhelmed with a flood of hostility and panic as the guards swarmed toward the ship. "Time's up," Eli shouted, pulling her toward the cockpit. Zarani stumbled but regained her footing, her mind racing. The guards were closing in, and escape seemed impossible. Then she remembered something Eli had said. "We don't have a choice. If you don't fight, you're already dead." Channeling every ounce of her strength, Zarani reached out with her mind, targeting the guards closest to the ship. She amplified their fears, planting illusions of shadows moving where there were none, of betrayal among their own ranks. The chaos she created bought them a few precious moments, but it wasn't enough to stop them all. The sound of heavy boots echoed through the corridor as the cartel leader, Vorzith, appeared. His towering frame and cold, reptilian eyes commanded the space, his voice a guttural growl. "You think you can escape me?" Vorzith lunged at Eli, his claws slashing through the air. Eli dodged, countering with a brutal punch that landed with a sickening crack. Zarani felt the sharp edges of Eli's determination, his willingness to fight against impossible odds. She wanted to help, but the guards were closing in from every side. She turned her attention to the guards, using her telepathic abilities to disable them one by one. The strain was immense, each mind a chaotic battlefield she had to navigate. Blood trickled from her nose as she pushed herself beyond her limits, but she refused to stop. Eli and Vorzith's battle raged on, each blow landing with bone-crunching force. Vorzith's strength was monstrous, but Eli's ferocity was unrelenting. Finally, with a desperate surge of strength, Eli drove a jagged piece of metal into Vorzith's chest. The cartel leader roared in agony, collapsing in a heap. Eli staggered back, blood dripping from a deep gash in his side. Zarani rushed to his side, her hands trembling as she tried to stop the bleeding. "You're not dying here," she said, her voice fierce despite the fear gripping her. "We're not out yet," Eli muttered, his face pale but his resolve unbroken. With Vorzith defeated, the guards hesitated, their fear outweighing their loyalty. Zarani seized the opportunity, dragging Eli into the cockpit. She strapped him into the co-pilot's seat before taking control of the ship. The engines roared to life, and the ship lurched off the platform. Blaster fire peppered the hull as the guards made a last-ditch effort to stop them. Zarani navigated through the storm of fire, her focus unwavering despite the chaos. As they broke through the planet's atmosphere, the silence was deafening. Zarani glanced at Eli, his breathing shallow but steady. She set the ship on autopilot and knelt beside him, her hands hovering over his wound. "You didn't have to fight for me," she said quietly, her voice trembling. Eli opened his eyes, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "We're partners, remember?" Tears welled in Zarani's eyes, a strange sensation for someone who had been taught to suppress emotion. She realized in that moment what Eli had given her, not just freedom, but a new understanding of herself and the world. They landed on a remote outpost hours later, its modest facilities a stark contrast to the grandeur of Zarani's former life. The humans there welcomed them cautiously, offering medical care and shelter. As Eli rested, Zarani found herself wandering the outpost, reflecting on everything that had led her here. She had been betrayed by her own blood, stripped of her identity, and thrust into a life of servitude. Yet, in the darkest depths of her despair, a human had shown her a light she never thought possible. She returned to Eli's side, watching as he stirred awake. His eyes met hers, and for the first time, she felt truly seen. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice steady. Eli grinned weakly. You did most of the work. Zarani shook her head. You showed me what it means to fight for something more than survival. They sat in silence, the weight of their journey settling over them. In that quiet moment, Zarani knew she was no longer bound by the chains of her past. She had found something far greater: love, trust, and the strength to rebuild. Though the future remained uncertain, they would face it together, their bond forged in fire and unbreakable.